Evolutionarily, the way that our days would have gone is very different than what happens today. This is pretty clear, but I think it's easy to forget in westernized cultures and as westernized, modernized humans. If any of us have ever gone backpacking, it sort of reminds us the way that we might have started a day in the past. It doesn't usually start with an alarm, and it usually starts with light. The light comes in, the light actually is a lot of the signal to our bodies to wake up. And then it's a signal to move outside and to get that bright light in your eyes, to stretch and to move and to ground and touch the earth. What we're doing now, and what I try to fight, but I sometimes fall prey to, is first thing I do is grab my cell phone, look at my email, and then I'm straight into work, and I don't have time to connect with my sense of purpose, my sense of spiritual grounding, my sense of physical grounding, my sense of emotional grounding as I start the day. So in an ideal world, what I really strive for is to get up, to get that morning light, to mimic the circadian rhythms, to mimic the circadian activities of my ancestors, to get that morning light, to get the red light in the morning, to go out to the beach. I feel so fortunate now to be in San Diego. I can go surfing frequently. I can get out there almost every morning. But while I'm out there, I'm connecting with the natural world. Everything else is on hold. It's one of the things I love about surfing, and I think that's a very primal thing about surfing, is that there's very few activities that we do now as humans other than perhaps backpacking and being in the ocean, where your cell phone is essentially worthless. And you can't bring a computer. No one can bring a computer into the ocean. You can't bring your cell phone when you're backpacking because you won't get signal. And so unplugging from all those things is such a reminder that this is the rhythm of our human lives. I think that toward the end of my time in medical school, at the beginning of my residency, I began to think about light and think about the way that light affects us. I did medical school in Tucson, Arizona, so we had lots of light. We had lots of ultraviolet light, and it was the beginning of my curiosity. And at that time, I was already interested in functional medicine and root cause medicine, and I knew about vitamin D, but I began to understand that ultraviolet light and visible spectrum and invisible spectrum light were about much more than just vitamin D. And they had incredible effects on the circadian rhythm through the suprachiasmatic nucleus and the production of melatonin. And then as I went deeper and deeper into it more recently, I started learning about other visible spectrum wavelengths like red light, non-visible spectrum wavelengths like near infrared, and how those could affect our body in unique ways. And what I came to discover was that, this is not surprising, it's quite intuitive, but we're so divorced from the idea of light as a nutrient. I really began to see light as a nutrient. So much of what I'd done in my career and my exploration was about food as nutrients. And I'm a proponent for the carnivore diet. People may be familiar with my work there. And when we're thinking about food, I'm thinking about where can I get the most nutritious food? Where can I get the most micronutrients, the most nutritive value out of my food? It was only natural that I would eventually figure out that light is a vitamin too, and that light is a nutrient. And if you ignore that, we're missing a big piece of how humans can be healthy. And there's a real evolutionary basis for that. Humans have been outside their entire lives until recently, when we started moving indoors and not being exposed to light. We know that now humans spend 93% of their lives indoors, 87% inside houses and 6% in cars. So we're only exposed to outdoor light 7% of the time. It's less than a tenth of what our ancestors were. We're getting less than a tenth of this critical vitamin, this critical nutrient that is light. And I got really interested in how I could recreate that in my own life. We're getting pretty smart as humans, and there's this whole realm of photobiomodulation now. And what we're exploring and what we're discovering is that there are ways to mitigate visible spectrum light at certain times of the day to preserve our circadian rhythms, and there are ways to bring wavelengths that we would experience during the day into our indoor lives, or make them more convenient for people to experience, make them more convenient for people to receive. And that can have great health improvements, great health consequences, because we're getting this nutrient that we're really missing for so long as humans. Obviously, with regard to food and light, we want to get it in the natural form as best as we can, but if we can't get that, and we're indoors, or we can't get those exposures, getting that in a way that's portable and convenient is very valuable for humans. Getting back to those nutrients, however we can get them, is a really valuable thing for humans. I think of Joovv lights as sort of like a multivitamin, right? And multivitamins or vitamins replace the food that we're eating. And if we can't always get the best food or the natural sources of food, we can get the vitamin, and it helps us. It helps us sort of fill in the gaps. And so the Joovv lights really help to fill in those gaps, help us return to that rhythm and that exposure to these natural light nutrients that we're missing not being outdoors.